Good evening. I'm Deborah Yedlin, and I got here by a combination of taxi and Air Canada, which was actually on time today. I'm very pleased to be here to talk to you about energy, and I'm going to take a bit of a different tack. But before I start, I was supposed to tell you where I came from and what my carbon footprint was. And so I'm going to turn it back to you, and I want to know what everybody else's carbon footprint was. So when I ask a question, and this applies to you, please stand. So I'd like to know who walked here. If you walked here, please stand up. If you used a bicycle, please stand up. No, stay standing. Everybody stay standing. Don't. So if you used a bicycle, stand up. Took public transit. Took a car, drove a car. Took Uber. A cab. How many people have flown in the last year? Turned on the heat or air conditioning? A light switch? Bought Lego? Right. So what I wanted to make a point here is that life takes energy. Everything we do every day takes energy. And I've been covering the energy sector for 20 years now, and I'm feeling a little bit like Peter Finch from the 1976 movie Network. What I like to call energy hypocrisy has made me, like Finch, mad as hell. And that's what I want to talk to you about tonight, the intersection of energy and hypocrisy. If we can't get beyond the hypocrisy, we can't maximize the value of our resources because all we do is talk past one another and not with or to one another. I'm especially glad to be doing it here today in Montreal, where your mayor has a few issues with Energy East and the pipeline. Yet it is more than ironic to many of us observing this issue that he is okay with dumping raw sewage into the Montreal harbor, but not okay with transporting oil by pipeline. It's been shipped off the East Coast for decades. 89% of what's exported today off the East Coast is through Quebec City or Montreal. So let me tell you a story. An oil patch CEO was at a conference in Denver, and it was during the Occupy Wall Street movement. And he left his conference, and it was snowy, and he was walking back to his hotel, and he came across the tent city where the protesters were staying, and he struck up a conversation with a young lad. And the young lad turned out to be from Vancouver, and he said, well, what are you doing here? And what are you protesting? And the fellow said, well, actually, I don't know. And he said, well, what are you here for? He said, well, a buddy of mine called and said asked me if I had any time to spare, and I said, well, I might. What do you want? He said, well, we'll pay your bus ticket down to Denver. We'll pay it back. We'll give you $100 spending money. We'll give you a tent to sleep in. And I thought, why not? I can keep the tent when I'm done, and that's what I'll do. So he was down joining something he really didn't believe in and know what it was, but felt like it was the right thing to do. But a few years go by, and the CEO sees the very same lad protesting in Montreal recently at the National Energy Board hearings about the Energy East pipeline. So is that protesting or is that opportunism? Why isn't anyone talking about the carbon footprint of the environmental movement, that it's become a profession, or the fact that their actions put people at risk? Here's another irony for you. The Trans Mountain expansion protesters in Surrey last year complained there weren't enough parking spots for them to join the protest. In Yiddish, we call that chutzpah. Life takes energy, and that's not changing. We'd like to think that it might, but it won't. And what I find galling are celebrities who think they're experts on climate change and energy usage. I'm thinking about people like Robert Redford, Leonardo DiCaprio, Neil Young, who played at a big concert in California this last weekend in front of 75,000 people who got there by plane, by bus, by car, by Uber, by motorcycle. Some people did take a bicycle, but that was only from their hotel room. And he couldn't resist criticizing the energy sector when he was singing an improvised stanza for Keep On Rocking in the Free World, even though everybody at that concert, including himself and his band, had used energy to get there. And what's ironic is that if you look at the original verse of Keep On Rocking in the Free World, the last two lines were, got fuel to burn, got roads to drive. I guess they were once a symbol of freedom, and now for Neil Young, they're taboo. And as for DiCaprio, this was really interesting. Not only was he very uneducated about the Chinook winds in Alberta, he had no problem renting a house from an oil patch CEO while filming The Revenant and flying back and forth every weekend from Calgary to Los Angeles on a private jet by himself. So my question is, what right do these professional protesters have, these smug celebrities, what right do they have to deny those living in energy poverty, where the First Nations in parts of this country or populations in the developing world, deny them a higher standard of living by gaining access to the energy that we all in this room and in this country take for granted? We can't say, sorry, it's too late for you. That's not right. By not pointing out the hypocrisy, the inconsistencies, we're all complicit and we all hold back development. Denis Coderre opposes the Energy East pipeline, but is only too happy for his province to receive transfer payments, a healthy portion of which has come from Alberta's energy revenues over the years. A healthy energy sector is important for the entire country, not just Alberta. And let me tell you, Alberta is tired of being the mistress in the closet, the dirty little secret of Canada's economic success. Coderre is on the record saying, when it comes to transporting oil, we need a perfect score. We can't afford to make mistakes. Mistakes are lac mégantic, where people were killed. Transporting oil by rail is more dangerous than by pipe. It's more expensive, and it has a bigger carbon footprint. Just think of the physics. A pipeline, a static piece of infrastructure below the surface with oil flowing through it at something as fast as 40 kilometers an hour, versus oil traveling above ground in a container between 40 and 80 kilometers per hour. It would take a train 75 kilometers long to transport 3 million barrels shipped every day by pipeline in this country. That's the equivalent of 200 Olympic-sized swimming pools. And spills, well, according to the Canadian Energy Pipeline Association, in 2015, 16 barrels of oil equivalent were spilled during that year. That works out to 2,500 bottles of whiskey, and there's whiskey outside after we're done. So do we have to do better? Do we have to be better at how we develop and use energy? Absolutely. And Alberta has become a hotbed for how we're trying to do that. Brian Ferguson, the CEO of Cenovus, is on the record saying we have to do better. We have to extract, we have to burn, we can get to an emissions-free future. But it's not happening tonight, and it's not happening in a week. It's going to take time. It's going to need reinvestment, and as we've heard, we haven't reinvested enough. And we have to be realistic. Oil and natural gas are used as fuels for transportation, heating, and electricity generation because of their energy density. There is no substitute, at least not yet. My good friend Chris Reagan at the Eco-Fiscal Commission just published a paper illustrating that very point with ethanol. Because the energy density of ethanol is lower, you need more of it to go the same distance, and so your carbon footprint increases. What I'm trying to say is everything has an impact, a cost. We have to be honest with ourselves in terms of how we manage the risks associated with that impact. You never completely eliminate risk in anything. We have to stop tilting at windmills. We have to realize that batteries for storage are a wonderful idea, but we also have to consider the human cost in mining the materials needed for those batteries. It's not so easy. There's a lot of work to be done on that front. Fossil fuels, whether we like it or not, will continue to be an important part of this planet's energy mix for decades to come. But it will become an energy mix that includes renewable and non-renewable resources, not one or the other. So now I say, let's stop the hypocrisy of using energy to protest the use of energy, and instead use the energy to become more efficient and responsible users of energy so that we can transition to the new energy future we're all looking forward to. Thank you.